Like you have Mr. Morale, who's someone big, like let's say the government or someone in power, and then you have the Big Steppers. The Big Steppers, like they have this fancy, extravagant name, the Big Steppers. Oh, but they're being downplayed because of the lowercase Big and Steppers. After 5 long years, we finally have some news regarding Kendrick Lamar's next studio album and its release date. So, welcome to the Bar for Bar podcast. And this week, we got a lot to talk about regarding Kendrick's album and what we can expect, and really why it took so long. So, to start things off, we'll read the statement that was released with the PG Lang header and the language enterprises, which, to be fair, I don't think we've seen an official statement from PG Lang at any point. So, this is new. It says language enterprises, which I think is also a new thing. And from the desk of Oklahoma for immediate release. Oklahoma, we're just assuming is Kendrick at this point, because who else could it be? So the note or statement reads, Los Angeles, California, April 18th, 2022. The following statement was released today by Oklahoma through his company PG Lang at 11 a.m. Pacific time in Los Angeles, California. Album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Release date, May 13th, 2022. All factual information for this release will come directly from this source only. And at the bottom we have the PG Lang, or one of the PG Lang logos, and it says, appreciate your patience. So, yes, all factual information is only going to come from Kendrick or Oklahoma, or, well, actually, no, he's just saying from Oklahoma himself. So, from Kendrick, not from PG Lang, not from Punch, not from me. I don't know what's happening. I'm just going off of what we may know. So aside from that, that pretty much disregards everything I'm going to say, but this is very interesting and is a different release pattern and idea for Kendrick because, he, in the past, he's done the heart and then a single and then the album. Whether or not there's like an actual release date for the album. I mean, with To Pimp a Butterfly, he just kind of surprise dropped that. With Good Kid, Mad City, and Damn, I believe there were solid release dates. This is a little bit different, but it also is kind of on brand given what he's doing right now. The last thing we really heard from Kendrick, aside from the features on Baby Keem's album, was just New Thoughts, where he was talking about where he's been and what he's been doing, and basically said he's coming back soon. That was back in, what was it, late 2021 or mid 2021? No, actually, that was mid, so August 20th. So it's been, 8 months since he last updated us outside of music. So, that's interesting. There's not a whole lot to really dig into with this statement aside from the title of the project. Before I get into that, actually, no, we'll get right into the title of the project. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Now, as goofy as that title may sound, there's, in the past, Kendrick's been very particular and very, like, there's a reason for these album titles. Like, Section 80 makes sense. Good Kid, Mad City makes sense. To Pimp a Butterfly makes sense. Damn makes sense. Like, there's all reason to it. Now, what the reason for Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is, we can only really guess at this point because we don't have any music associated with it yet. Based on it being morale, probably going to touch on a lot of things that Kendrick's been touching on throughout his career, like just morality in general. Well, no, not morality. That's one part of it that you could just draw from it, but morale is typically like people's feelings and energy about things. Like, whenever you think of morale, you're thinking like, oh, someone, like, we need to boost morale, we need to make people feel good. And the Big Steppers in this part, maybe, like, the first thing that came to mind was like dancing. Now, that could lead to, oh, we're just putting on this facade, like it's the Truman Show sort of vibes. Like, what is actually, like, all these things that are happening in front of us, all these things that have happened in the past couple of years, it's just so, like, absurd to the point where, like, is this actually reality, or Is it is someone just putting on a show? Um, because like I said, to my mind, the big steppers is, people. Well, it could be like a dance sort of thing, but it could also be people making these steps, and trying to push things forward. Because one, like I said, it could be that whole facade of morale boosting, like the you could say the government or just the general public wants to boost people's morale, so they're gonna put on a show and make it seem like they are for the people or for this particular cause, which I mean is a whole nother thing that Kendrick will probably go into, because if you haven't listened to Kendrick, I mean, he's very, very focused on like just justice, and justice in the sense that not like necessarily good and bad, but more corruption in the justice system, because we've seen all the stuff that's been happening to black people specifically, but people of color, like because of corruption and how the police behave, and stuff like that. So these are things that Kendrick talks about often, but I lost where I was going with that. But the morale boosting could be just they're faking it, like they're just saying like, oh yeah, we're gonna put on the show essentially, and make people feel good about us and make them believe in us again because we're so for the people. So that's one thing. Another option is that he himself is Mr. Morale. Like he is trying to boost morale and push forward. And the big steppers here could be like part of a parade or protest even. The protest does make a little bit more sense given the recent events, like in the last couple of years. Like we've had so many more protests and like at least more attention drawn to these protests. Like they're always around, but no one really, like they're not at that scale that everyone talks about them. So, he could be pushing this whole like protest vibe or even parade vibe, because Mr. Morale again just sounds very, very upbeat. But again, that's kind of what morale is supposed to do. Like you're supposed to boost morale. So he himself could be Mr. Morale in the sense. The other thing that was released with this project, before I forget about it, or not the project, but the statement, was a similar announcement from TDE, because this album is going to be Kendrick's last TDE album. But their announcement was way simpler. It's just on like a beige background. Kendrick Lamar, new album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, 5/13/22. Now, the only reason I want to draw attention to this is because Kendrick is very intentional, like I mentioned. So, if you look at the different, like the way that it's written out in the PG Lang statement, every word is capitalized, as normal titles go. But with the TDE release, Mr. Morale and the are all capitalized, but Big Steppers is lowercase. Now, the only reason I'm drawing any sort of attention to this is because Good Kid, Mad City was stylized in a similar manner. This, I don't think, is meant to be any sort of acronym, just like Mad City was, but I think it does also draw attention to the Big Steppers part. So, another idea potentially for this album, like you have Mr. Morale, who's someone big, like let's say the government or someone in power, and then you have the Big Steppers. The Big Steppers, like they have this fancy, extravagant name, the Big Steppers. Oh, but they're being downplayed because of the lowercase big and steppers. All of these are definitely possibly stretches, but it's Kendrick, and this is the latest bit of news that we've gotten from him in what seems like forever. So it's something to talk about, and just ideas are coming to me with this, because Kendrick's one of those people that you can pull a concept from his album. Like there's generally an overall concept to his projects, but you could also listen to most of the songs individually on their own as just that song. Like they don't necessarily need to connect to anything bigger. So, it really could go either way with this. Um, Now, unless something else comes to mind regarding what this title could be, uh, the other things that I wanted to mention were what this album could sound like. In terms of production, I have no idea, to be completely honest, because everyone for the longest time, pretty much ever since Damn, was like, oh, it's going to be heavily rock influenced. But we also thought that Damn was going to be rock influenced, or those were the rumors. And I mean, yeah, I guess it was to an extent, but it wasn't like so in your face about it. Like, but you can even, if you think about it, rock is like hip hop is influenced by everything, and rock is black music, so it's really not that much of a stretch. Anyways, I think people just are assuming rock in the most, I guess, publicized sense. You can definitely have rock and it still be very Kendrick, I feel. Now, aside from that, the things that came to mind, because I wasn't even going to talk about this because I didn't even know it was coming out. I was going to talk about Damn and how it holds up and all that. Damn does hold up pretty well. It's not everyone's favorite Kendrick album, but it's still very good in my opinion. But while listening to it again, there's themes that I feel will get carried on through that. With To Pimp a Butterfly, and he even addressed it on Damn, which is the line I'm going to reference. But with To Pimp a Butterfly, he made very specifically black music to uplift black people and black artists. And then on Element on Damn, he says, last LP, I try to uplift a black artist, but there's a difference between black artists and whack artists. So you see this trend of where he's just kind of getting, it's not even a trend, I guess, but this progression where he's starting to get tired and he's a little disappointed, if anything, about the current situation in music. And then with his verse on Family Ties, he said a few things, but the main thing was 2021, I ain't taking no prisoner. Last year, y'all fucked up all the listeners. Who went platinum? I call that a visitor. Who the fuck backing them? All been falsified. The facts mean this is a vaccine and the game need me to survive. And he goes on from there. Basically, he spent the majority of his verse on Family Ties saying how, I guess, disappointed he is in hip hop and rap and music in general, I guess you could say, to an extent, and like how he took a break essentially and just like, all right, well, I came back and this is what you're all doing? Like, what the hell? Like, this isn't okay. Like, this isn't what I left y'all with. Like, when your parents go, like, out for the weekend, or even if they go to the grocery store and they're like, all right, now, make sure you don't mess nothing up. And they come back and the whole house is on fire. Or even the community gift where Gambino comes back in and everything's on fire and he has pizza in his hand. Like, he's just like, what happened? So I think what we're likely to get is, we are likely to get commentary on music in general. Like that, I think goes without saying, because that's something that Kendrick tends to go off on often. I mean, Control. Like he did that. He's been doing that most of his career. But I think beyond that, we're gonna get a commentary because, as I mentioned, it's been 5 years since Damn dropped, 5 and a couple days. So there's a lot that happened in between that time. Aside from everything that's happened between 2020 and now, Kendrick's had a child. He's been with his family. So he has probably a different outlook on things. And I think this is something that he's been thinking about through Damn and going forward. Before I forget, yes, the Black Panther album came out after Damn, but I don't necessarily consider that a Kendrick solo album. It's more of a Kendrick executive produced album or A&R'd album because just kind of all over it. He's not really the main artist on every track. But anyways, he's definitely been thinking about, just other things as time's gone on. Like I said, has a family now, or he's been had a family, but he's now starting his own family. And that's there's a lot of pressure and a lot of things that come with that. Like you have to like you there's things that you never thought about that come up when you start to have a family. I can't relate because I don't have that experience yet. But I think that's something that we're going to be getting a lot of on this. Like he's going to be relating how his child has been basically like they started to get brought up during this just wild time. I mean, even like you have to remember like um he didn't really touch on it on Damn, but he's probably going to touch on the Trump presidency. Like, it's likely because there was a whole lot of stuff happening then too. Like I mean, I'm not like trying to say anything either way, but you know, there was a lot that happened during that time, and then just from there going forward into the pandemic and to like just all the just the fact that all these black people were getting killed and it was being way more heavily publicized than it has been in the past. Like he even said in Family Ties something along the lines of he's been ducking the he's been ducking the pandemic, social gimmicks. He's been ducking the overnight activists, and he's not a trending topic because Kendrick has been doing this activism and just talking about it his entire life, not even just his music career. Like he's been doing this forever. So this is something that's like built within him. Like this is not something that he's just doing because it's trending or because it's popular. Like he's always wanted, like he's always brought this up. So, you know, we're gonna get that for sure. Like I would be very surprised if we don't get that. How it's gonna be given to us and how it's gonna be delivered is gonna be, I mean, we're gonna have to wait and see because we really don't know. Like personally, I feel like the most direct that he'll ever be was on Family Ties, like at least going forward. Like that's probably the most so direct he'll be in terms of like what he's trying to get across, because that's just how he is. Like Kendrick's always been very subtle. I mean, the biggest example that I always come back to is Swimming Pools. Like it's a song about drinking and how, you know, like people like do it and like why they do it, but he made it sound like a very uplifting, like a party song almost. Like that song, the vibe doesn't necessarily fit the lyrics or the meaning and concept. So he's going to do that sort of thing. Like I would be pretty surprised if he's just very direct with us, to be completely honest. I don't think he's really going to say anyone's names, like unless it's just kind of in passing. Like again, probably the most direct he'll be is how he addressed Megan on Family Ties. But it's at the end of the day, we just don't know. We have no idea what Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is going to sound like. We don't know what sort of concept he's going to go for. We don't know what he's going to say. All we can do at this point is wait until May 13th, 2022, when it's released, and then we can talk about it. But until then, we can always theorize and, you know, just go on from there and see what he may do, because that's part of it, isn't it? As rap fans, we're very excited and very intrigued with what our favorite elusive artist is going to do. But yeah, I think that's where I'll cut it. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else of real note to say. That was enough rambling about this. This was going to be a full podcast, but I'm going to just cut it there because y'all don't need to hear me ramble about Kendrick any more than this right now. I'm sure your timeline's completely filled with Kendrick news. But like I said, that's where I'm going to leave it. Let me know in the comments below what you think of all this news. I'm so sorry about the mic. But yeah, let me know what you think about this news and where you think Kendrick's going to go with this. At this point, like I said, it's all speculation. We have no idea. All we can do is talk about it and guess. And maybe by May 13th, we'll have a better idea. Hopefully by then he'll have another single put out or a single put out. But again, we'll just have to wait and see. Also, like and subscribe if you want to see more content and ramblings like this. Thank you for watching, and please stay safe out there.